Current researchers debate what the term castle covers, but generally consider it a fortified place of residence. For hundreds of years, England had relied on timber castles, until 1066 when the Normans would bring back the grandeur of Roman techniques with stone. When gunpowder was introduced to Europe in the 14th century, it significantly affected the construction of castles in the 15th century, and when artillery became powerful enough to destroy their stone walls, they stopped being built in the 16th century. They have now changed from being military buildings to monuments and tourist attractions, but for almost 1,000 years these castles helped shape the UK. Number 1. Caernarfon Castle. Construction began on Caernarfon Castle in 1283 and reached its current state in 1323. Even though it was never completed, it's still one of the most impressive medieval buildings in the UK. It was built to be part of a chain of castles by King Edward I to conquer Wales and bring the country under the rule of England. The castle was designed to be impenetrable, and on 1408 a Welsh rebellion with the support of the French put that to the test. They used siege engines and battering rams, but the reinforced gate was built to resist battering rams and the high walls were unscalable. Just 28 soldiers managed to repel the siege. Number 2. Cardiff Castle. In the 11th century, William the Conqueror built the foundations for Cardiff Castle on top of an ancient fort constructed 1,000 years earlier by the Romans. In fact, sections of the wall still contain stones used by the Romans. Over the years the castle's defenses expanded, but the original motte and bailey style of the Normans is still there today. In 1403 the Welsh uprising of Owain Glyndwr besieged Cardiff Castle. After running out of food the defenders surrendered. Centuries later in 1766 Cardiff Castle was transformed into a Georgian mansion which demolished the massive Bailey Wall and removed historic buildings for a garden. Number 3. Warwick Castle. Built on a natural cliff overlooking the River Avon, Warwick Castle is at a vital strategic location to maintain control of the Midlands, which is why William the Conqueror established a motte and bailey castle in Warwick in 1068 and why the future kings of England entrusted the castle to the Earl of Warwick and some of England's most powerful barons as a country house and to use it as a military garrison. During the 100 Years' War, the facade facing the city was refortified, giving rise to one of the best-known examples of military architecture of the 14th century. Decades later the castle's defenses were put to the test in 1642 when it was besieged by royalist forces. They opened fire on the castle, but did little damage before retreating. Number 4. Carrickfergus Castle. Carrickfergus Castle is a Norman castle in Northern Ireland. Overlooking the Irish Sea and surrounded by water on 3 sides, it was built in an ideal location for defending, and it needed to be. The castle has been besieged by the Irish, the English, the French, and the Scots when in 1314 forces of Sir Robert the Bruce besieged the castle. The siege lasted 1 year before the defenders ran out of supplies and surrendered. It was a short-lived victory because within 2 years England recaptured the castle. It was a symbol of English occupation, and for 750 years the castle was under continuous military occupation. Number 5. York Castle. York Castle was the center of royal power in northern England. William the Conqueror built a motte and bailey style wooden keep in 1068, and in 1244 King Henry III ordered it to be completely rebuilt in stone. The tower was shaped in unusual but clever 4 overlapped circles like a 4-leaf clover. By the 16th century, the fortifications had been extended beyond the castle to include a high stone wall which reached 2 miles long and totally encircled the medieval city. In 1642 the city of York and its castle became the refuge for King Charles I, and in 1644 York was besieged by Roundhead forces. The siege lasted for more than 2 months before Charles surrounded. By the 19th century, most of the once great fortress had been demolished. All that's left today is the outer city walls and what is known as Clifford's Tower. Number 6. Stirling Castle. Surrounded on 3 sides by steep cliffs, Stirling Castle played an important role in the history of Scotland due to its strategic location on the River Forth. Like all castles, the one at Stirling was built to be impenetrable, and in 1296 it was put to the test for the first time during the Battle of Stirling Bridge. The Scots, led by William Wallace, defeated the English army that fled and left Wallace the castle. In 1303 King Edward I wanted revenge. He commanded his army to surround the castle while they built 17 trebuchets. It took 3 months to complete, during which time the defenders wanted to surrender, but Edward refused. He used a trebuchet to destroy the gatehouse and retake the castle. It was later recaptured by Robert the Bruce, who destroyed the castle so his enemies couldn't use it. 20 years later it was rebuilt by the Stuart family. Number 7. Dover Castle. From a Roman lighthouse to Norman fortress, to military fortress built by King Henry II, Dover Castle is one of the most impressive castles ever built. And its defenses were tested under the rule of King John, when French forces sieged the castle. The French soon realized that their siege weapons had little effect on the stone walls, so decided to tunnel under the foundations to make them collapse. This tactic is known as undermining, and they succeeded, but the defenses inside the bailey managed to repel the attack. The castle engineers expanded Dover's underground tunnels to counter any future attempt at undermining. Centuries later, in preparation for the Napoleonic Wars, gun placements and cannon platforms were added. Though fully prepared, these defenses were never put to the test. Number 8. Tower of London. No top 10 list of British castles would be complete without the Tower of London. The oldest standing stone castle in England was founded in 1066 by William the Conqueror in a prime location next to the deepest inland port on the River Thames. As the centre for British monarchs in historic London, the tower is intimately linked to British history and has been a royal palace, military garrison, a prison, a mint, and even a zoo when the royal menagerie was made accessible to the public. This iconic castle, named the White Tower due to its whitewashed stones, went through several stages of expansion, especially during the reign of Richard the Lionhearted, Henry III, who added a curtain wall, and later Edward I, adding a further curtain wall and a moat filled with water. Millions of tourists now visit the site each year. Number 9. Edinburgh Castle. Edinburgh Castle is another iconic British landmark located in the centre of Edinburgh on Castle Rock. The origins of the site are so old and unknown that it is difficult to establish the true date without speculation, but Edinburgh Castle has been one of the most fought-over castles in the UK. King Edward I managed to capture the castle when he used a trebuchet he named Warwolf, which is the largest trebuchet ever made. They sieged the castle for 3 days before the defenders surrendered. The castle remained under English rule for almost 20 years. It was only in 1314 that the castle was recaptured by Sir Thomas Randolph, the nephew of Robert the Bruce. Number 10. Windsor Castle. Like many of the castles in this list, Windsor Castle was originally built by William the Conqueror. At that time, the Motte and Bailey-style castle was made of wood and gradually reinforced with stone walls. It was part of a ring of defensive castles to ensure Norman dominance on the outskirts of London and control a strategic portion of the Thames. The site was chosen partly for its defendable position. It is now one of the largest castles in the world. Since the time of Henry I of England, it has been inhabited by numerous British monarchs and has the longest record for continual use of any castle in the world.